We're going to call the Assembly Budget Subcommittee number 5, Public Safety, to order, and we'll start with discussion items only, and we'll go to item number 9, issue 9, and this is the judicial branch. When you're all in place, you may begin. Thank you.
All right, there we go. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and member. Yes, we are presenting the trial court's civil case management system replacement funding. The May revision proposes a one-time general fund augmentation over 3 years of $24.8 million. It would support the transition of 4 courts, which will represent 25% of all case processing in the state, from their current V3 case management systems to modern commercial off-the-shelf case management systems. And we really appreciate the proposal, and we appreciate hopefully the support of the LAO on this. It's an important movement towards modernizing our branch and providing us the kind of connectivity that trial courts desperately need.
Department of Finance.
Tiffany Garcia, Department of Finance, and we support this proposal.
Legislative Analysis Office.
Anita Lee with the Legislative Analyst Office. We recommend that the legislature approve the proposal. However, we also recommend that the legislature enact provisional language that specifies that the funding may be expended no earlier than 30 days after the Joint Legislative Budget Committee receives a copy of the California Department of Technology's review and recommendation of each of the 4 proposed projects. So the proposal merits approval, as the new civil case management systems would likely generate savings from reduced ongoing system maintenance costs that could then be redirected to other trial court programs and services. However, state law currently requires that any court technology project with total costs estimated at more than $5 million be subject to the reviews and recommendations of the California Department of Technology. In conducting its review, the department is required to complete certain activities, such as evaluating the justification for the proposed project, as well as ensuring that the project's approach is acceptable for oversight and risk management. The California Department of Technology must then submit a copy of their reviews and recommendations to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee. This information alerts the Joint Legislative Budget Committee to potential concerns with the project and allows the committee to conduct oversight to increase the likelihood of successful project completion. We find that all 4 of the projects, 1 in each of the courts, will each individually exceed the $5 million threshold. None have been reviewed by the Department of Technology at this time, and because of that, we recommend that the legislature enact the provisional language that permits use of this funding only after the Joint Legislative Budget Committee has the opportunity to review the California Department of Technology's analysis of the projects.
Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think our concern regarding the language, and we definitely will report on projects that exceed the $5 million to the extent that each of these does so. But we have some experience with Caltech in so much as, for example, Los Angeles Superior Court submitted their information regarding the Unified Communications Systems expansion and upgrade. That was submitted in April of 2015, and we've yet to receive any comments. And so if we have to wait for Caltech to complete their work, then 30-day submittal, then we are jeopardizing sort of a successful implementation of these projects. We have other projects that have been submitted for Caltech review that have been 6 months still pending receipt of their review. So we have a grave concern about their timeline and making sure that these projects are accomplished timely.
Okay. Finance, do you have any thoughts on the position of the courts?
Brennan Murphy, Department of Finance. I would say that the 30-day wait period is different than the normal process as discussed by the LAO. And therefore could potentially create a delay. I think we'd be happy to work with Caltech to make sure that they prioritize the reviews to the extent possible.
We're going to hold this, and hopefully you all can work together. Now we're going to move to...
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We're going to call roll at this time. You can go ahead and come up to the table, though. The next group is the California Military Department.
Campos?
Here.
Campos here. Melendez? Here. Melendez here. Rodriguez? Here. Rodriguez here. We have a quorum.
Whenever you're ready, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. And I'm Major General Matt Beavers of the Military Department. Today, we're talking about budget item number 10. It's our proposal for seeking $1.9 million in general fund for preliminary plans and working drawings for the Los Alamitos Southern Regional Operations Center.
Department of Finance.
Yep.
Sally Lucanville, Department of Finance. We're supportive of this proposal, and we don't have any additional comments at this time.
Legislative Analysis Office.
Helen Kirstein with the Legislative Analyst Office. We don't have any concerns with the proposal. We'd note that it's basically a similar proposal to what the legislature has seen before. Previously, it was a proposal by OES, and this is actually a revisiting of that project, which will now rescope the project just slightly to include a military department presence at the same facility as OES.
Thank you. Is there any public comment for item number 9 and number 10? See none. Any questions from my colleagues? None. We're going to go ahead and vote on the vote-only items at this time. We need a motion from items issue 1 through issue 8. Assemblymember Melendez moves. A second by Assemblymember Rodriguez. Secretary will call the roll. You want to call the roll, Secretary?
The vote is on the entire vote-only calendar. The motion is to adopt the staff recommendation on vote-only issues 1 through 8. Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Holden? Aye. Holden, aye. Lackey? Aye. Lackey, aye. Melendez? Aye. Melendez, aye. Rodriguez? Aye. Rodriguez, aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Well, there's no question, so thank you. Next, issue 11, Office of Emergency Services. Please come forward. When you're ready, we can begin.
Hello, my name is Sarah Still, the Budget Officer at the California Office of Emergency Services. Today, the request before you is for $10 million general fund and 4 positions in 16-17 to provide initial operating costs and staff to begin the build-out of the California Earthquake Early Warning System and Program. The requested funding would assist with the initial capital and operating costs associated with the system and the program, building upon the state's existing seismic network and proposed implementation strategy.
That was a nice short presentation. Direct. Office of Finance.
Emma Jungworth, Department of Finance. The administration supports this proposal.
LAO.
Helen Kirstein with the Legislative Analyst Office. We're concerned that the proposal may not be consistent with legislative intent. Specifically, the legislature in the past has stated an intent to minimize the amount of general fund that's used for an earthquake early warning system. And currently, there is statute that requires the department to identify funding sources for this system, but prohibits the department from identifying the general fund as a funding source. So we would note that to the extent that the legislature continues to prioritize prioritize minimizing the amount of general funds that goes towards this purpose. The legislature may not want to approve this, or may want to approve just the funding for a financing plan, so that as part of this proposal, there's $150,000 for a financing plan that may provide some additional information on other funding sources that might be available. So that's one alternative for the legislature. However, if the legislature would rather prioritize moving this project forward as quickly as possible, then they could consider approving the project in its entirety. That would probably expedite the project, but it would result potentially in more general fund contributions.
So your concern is that because there isn't policy that has made it a priority through the body, is that your concern?
There's actually existing statute that prohibits OES from identifying the general fund as a funding source for this. So that's indicative that at least a past legislature seemed to want the department to find other funding sources. And I believe there was some intent language that was part of that original bill that expressed the legislature's intent at that time.
Do you have that intent language?
I believe I have it, but it might take me just a second to find it.
I'll go to finance if you have any comments to that.
Brendan Murphy, Department of Finance. I would just note that the prohibition actually expires on June 30th of this year if we have been unsuccessful in securing the other fund sources. So consistent with the current law at this point in time, we've been unsuccessful in securing other fund sources to start the build out of our earthquake early warning system. Therefore, you see the proposal before you starting July 1 to use a general fund for our initial payment and down payment, with the expectation that we will build with other fund sources into the future.
Okay. Can I ask you when that was passed, what year? Do you know?
I believe 2013, and I do have that. The language says it is the intent of the legislature that the establishment of an earthquake early warning system pursuant to this act shall not result in an undue burden upon the general fund, and that to the extent or to the maximum extent possible, the Office of Emergency Services shall seek other sources for funding the implementation of the government code section.
So thank you for clarifying that and finding out what year and what exactly the language said. So we're going to hold this today, and I'd like for you to communicate with the department. I think that this is essential. That's my interpretation of what we need to do around early warning systems for earthquakes. I think that we're seeing that earthquakes can really devastate a community and a state, as we see what happens across the U.S. and in other countries. So I'm looking forward to you all working towards that, and I will work with leadership to find out clarifying intents regarding the policy that you have. Thank you. Any public comment on this item? Any questions from my colleagues? Yes, Assemblymember Rodriguez.
So it's a great program. I see where we're heading to, and it's great that we are looking to provide this type of system. So 3 questions. One, will these eventually, when it's built out, do we have a time frame, next 5-10 years? Is there anybody that knows when we're looking at hopefully having a system in place?
Hi, Tina Curry, Deputy Director with the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. This will definitely help accelerate that time frame. We do have projections of when we think we can have initial, what we call limited public rollout, sort of sector by sector over the next couple of years. Other components are going to take longer. There's actual construction that is involved. So there's a lot of things that will be happening at the same time. But there should be, within the next couple of years, assuming funding is put together, we would be able to at least start doing the limited. We're actually testing the system now. So there's not been a delay to find out if it works. So that when everything comes together, then it would be ready to go. But there's components that would happen sooner than later.
And these individuals will be housed in OES, I guess, department?
What in the proposal, yes, that's correct.
Okay. That's my only question.
This item is on hold, and thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion with you all. We're going to go to issue 12, and you may proceed.
The request before you is an increase of $30 million general fund in 1617 to support local jurisdictions using the California Disaster Assistance Act program. The program supports recovery of all types of disasters such as wildfires, earthquakes, floods, drought, and tree mortality. We project a shortfall of $34 million next year in local reimbursement claims under the CDAA program. This is related to, but not solely in relation to, the proclaimed state of emergency for tree mortality.
Office, Department of Finance.
The administration supports this proposal.
LAO.
Helen Kirstein with the LAO. We haven't raised any specific concerns with the proposal. We note, however, that there could be some additional costs in future years. There are a number of dead and dying trees currently, and there could be claims associated with those both in this year as well as in subsequent years. So the legislature will just want to make sure that it's comfortable with this policy of funding all of these trees through the Disaster Assistance Act. Additionally, we just wanted to note that even though this is quite a large amount of funding, $30 million, we'll only be able to fund a fraction of the number of dead and dying trees in the state. So we'll just want to make sure probably that the administration is prioritizing removing the most hazardous trees so that we protect public safety as much as possible.
So you have a system in place to be able to prioritize?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for that question and that response. This is on hold. Anyone from the public? Oh, Assemblymember Holden? Anyone from the public that has a comment? Or Assemblymember Holden.
I just wanted to raise the letter that we received from San Bernardino County where they were looking to draw on funds from this particular area in regards to the terrorist attacks from December 2nd of last year, and they are asking that $19 million be made available for reimbursement for monies that they spent as related to the collaboration of services, public safety services. So I guess the question is, requests like this, how does this fit into the emergency category in terms of California disaster assistance and how the Office of Emergency Services address terrorist attacks?
Charles Rabamad with California Office of Emergency Services, Assistant Director for Recovery. We're well aware of San Bernardino County request for the Waterman's incident, and we set aside a portion of the funds to reimburse them for their eligible expenses. Now, some of the expenses are not eligible under the California Disaster Assistance Act, and we relay this information to the county, and we're working very closely with the county to even look at other funding, maybe possible funding from the feds or anybody else. So, but for now, we identify probably around $4.5 million under CDA.
So it does fit a definition of
yes,
how
absolutely.
monies could be reimbursed.
Absolutely, yes.
My understanding is that the federal government has or is considering reimbursing for some amount, but it's not going to the counties or it's not going to local jurisdictions. It may go to the county, but I'm not sure exactly how. What's the channel? Would that run through the state, or would it go directly to the county if federal dollars were available?
Brendan Murphy, Department of Finance, and I hate to say this, but it's a very nuanced answer to that. Unfortunately, when it comes to terrorist events, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security does not have a kind of straightforward funding methodology that they use, and so your question is, I believe, still unanswered by anything that we've seen from the Department of Homeland Security as of yet. A typical process, they use a state administering agency, which in this state is the Office of Emergency Services. However, looking back at past terrorist events, that is not always the way they decide to reimburse. We honestly don't have an answer at this point.
Got it. Well, it's being held, so it sounds like there's some time to get further time to get some of the answers to the questions. And I assume that San Bernardino County is doing some form of reconciliation on how these dollars were spent, because they're just really asking for $19 million without, and maybe you've received something that goes in a little bit more detail in terms of the way that they spent the money and how it adds up to 19?
We have. We did receive the information from the county, and we met with the county a few times. In fact, we're meeting with them probably in like a week or so to go over all the expenses and discuss with them how we can probably in the future these type of expenses can be covered. But for now, the way the California Disaster Assistance Act is written, most of these expenses will not be eligible. We tried, we looked outside of the box to see if we can do anything, but the majority of these expenses cannot be covered.
I see. And you're saying that there's approximately
$4.5 million.
$4.5 million that could be.
Yes.
Through the chair, if it's possible to see that in terms of the breakdown and how that's come together, because it gives us answers to those who are looking for help.
We can get back to you on that, yes.
So what's the timeline that you could get back to us on that information?
Do it as soon as possible.
Within the next 2 days?
2 days.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Assemblymember Rodriguez.
You just follow up. You said about there are some things that are covered or not. Can you give us examples of things that are not covered?
Okay, for example, the county was requesting the expenses incurred for funeral, inviting families and all that. We understand this is really needed. We understand it's a good cause, but under our regulations, it's very clear these type of expenses are not eligible. It has to be public health and safety. We have to connect with public health and safety. The other ones, for example, they want to renovate all the cubicles in the area, just so people, when they go there and start working, they don't want to see the same cubicle that this person was working on. We understand also this is required, but it's not really, it doesn't fall under our regulation.
Okay. Any other questions? This item is being held. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, issue 13.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. Jason Lopez, Deputy Director of Fiscal Services for the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So for issue number 13, we have an update on our offender population. Based on the spring projections and compared to the data included in the governor's January budget, decreases are expected in budget year for each of the department's offender populations, including adult inmates, parolees, and our juvenile wards. Changes in adult inmate and parolee populations have resulted in an $11.6 million current year reduction and a $9.8 million budget year reduction. The revised budget year ADP is estimated at 128,821 for our adult inmates and 42,601 for parolees. The spring estimates related to our juvenile population include a decrease of $493,000 in current year and $259,000 in budget year, based on a ward ADP decrease of 12 and 10 in those 2 years. I'm joined by Denise Allen, who is our chief of our Office of Research, and she's going to provide just a little more detail with our POP projections.
Sure. Hi there. So first I'd like to go over what assumptions are included in our population projections. So our current projections include all the court-ordered population reduction measures, Proposition 47, segregated housing regulation policy changes. Things that are not factored in are any policies, initiatives, or laws that were not in effect as of December 31, 2015. There is an important change I'd like to point out in the current population projections. For the first time, we include inmates in alternative custody. programs and reentry programs, as well as medical parole. They have not previously been accounted for in our projections, and so now you'll see those appearing in our projections. This change was made basically to create a more comprehensive view of the offender population. So now the projections account for all populations under CDCR's jurisdiction. As Mr. Lopez mentioned, our projections, they project 1 year of decline of approximately 8%, followed by 4 years of growth. And by the year 2020, our population is expected to have a net growth of 2.2%. Contrary to the growth that is projected on the institution side, our parole side is projected to decline by 2020, a net decline of 4.8%. Let's see. And then for our juvenile population, we're observing very slight growth, roughly 2% over the next 5 years. And if you have any questions about the methodology used for the projections, I'd be happy to answer them. I will say that over the last several years, our projections have shown to be very accurate. So we're tracking at about 0.1%. So if you look at the total institution population, that's roughly about 53 offenders. So very accurate projections, and we're very proud of our projections. And at this time, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from anyone on the panel? Then we're going to go to the Department of Finance.
Josh Gauger, Department of Finance. We have nothing further to add at this time.
LAO.
Aaron Edwards with the LAO. We do have comments on a couple of the components included in the administration's population adjustments. The first is related to the inclusion of $2.8 million to expand a female community reentry program. The facility would bring the total number of such facilities up to 5. There are 4 facilities currently existing that were created to satisfy a federal court order to expand alternative custody programs for female offenders. We are recommending that the legislature direct CDCR to address a couple of key issues regarding this proposal before deciding whether to approve it. First, you may want to ask the department whether this proposal is necessary to satisfy the federal court order to expand these alternative custody programs, or whether they consider this to be being done on a voluntary basis. And then the second issue is that we think it's unclear whether the department will actually be able to utilize all of the capacity that they're proposing, given that they have not fully utilize the capacity in the 4 existing facilities. I will hand it off to my colleague, Jonathan Peterson, to discuss our second issue of concern.
So the May revision also includes an estimate for the increase to the budget related to inmate pharmaceuticals. And the administration proposed in January using the pharmaceutical CPI past data in order to make projections on the current year and the budget year for inmate pharmaceuticals. And in January, we recommended using available projections for that index to better account for ongoing changes in the pharmaceutical prices, pharmaceutical drug market. And we continue to recommend that approach, which would change the amount of funding that would go towards the inmate pharmaceutical adjustment in the budget.
Yes, you may respond.
Thanks. Just wanted to make one quick comment about the Enhanced Alternative Custody Program. The department's actually been remarkably successful in keeping those beds filled. There was a current year estimated savings included in the May revision, but it was a $2.1 million reduction, and $1.9 million of the reduction was tied simply to the delayed activation of a newly planned Stockton facility. So actually, in looking at the utilization of each of those facilities, they've been near at capacity for the majority of the year. Also related to the Enhanced Alternative Custody Program, program. It is part of the February 10, 2014 court order to expand the use of these programs, so it does fulfill that requirement. But also, I think the administration has made it clear in previous testimony that we, although aren't required to maintain 137.5% of capacity for the specific female population, we're actually measured, on the whole population, males plus females. We have made it clear in the past that it is a goal of the administration to meet that target for the female population as well. And this additional 50-bed facility in Sacramento, based on the most recent population projections, would be necessary in order to maintain 137.5 for the female population.
Any other questions? Any public comment? Okay, you may proceed with the next item.